right. Hi, everyone. I'm Nana from Ghana.
Yo, it's Zebri, aka the Salon Boy. How's everybody doing today? First and foremost, I want to direct you guys saying that welcome to the show. We are called the
African in Us.
We're weird. So basically, just to kind of give the audience just basically what we are a forum for basically expression. So what we are trying to do is really encompass basically our Africanness and also bridge the connections to the diaspora. Being an African in America, we have some similarities, but we also have a lot of differences that we really display. Also, us Africans, we have a lot of different things that we kind of display in regards to our cultures, perspectives, and how we see the world. But mainly, we want to bridge all these gaps and really come to the really fruition of building this real big diasporic experience. So, if anything else, you got anything else?
Oh no, I couldn't have said it better myself, to be honest. You covered all the bases right there.
For real.
Okay, you gave yourself a little bit too much, but today we have a special guest with us, the illustrious, glorious, magnificent Noaman.
Thanks for all the kind words.
Very, very welcome. Noaman, would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Noaman from Sudan. I'm studying international politics and economics.
Okay.
Gotcha. Smart man.
Very, very smart.
Women, remember.
All right, so going off of that, today we will be discussing Sudan, everything Sudan, from the recent protests to art to you name it. We're just gonna go ahead and just have this conversation and see what we can all learn from each other today.
Okay, I'll say, first and foremost, I want to start by talking about just yourself, man. How is it being a Sudani American? What are some of the things that you had to face, the experiences, and some of the things that our viewers who are also African can kind of get an idea of for, being American and then trying to also be your Africanness as well.
Right.
So I've only been here for 3 years.
No, 3 years, wow.
Yeah, and I think, it's good and bad at the same time. The GW has like such a big international student community.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So you could easily just blend in with people who like share a similar culture or background and not actually have to like deal with people who grew up here and Americans and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
On the positive side, yeah, it's kind of your comfort zone, but on the other hand, you would want to interact with other people to learn more about their experiences and culture.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of challenges, like I haven't faced many here.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because I already spoke the language and everything. The community was very diverse and stuff, so it wasn't much big of a problem. Plus, in addition to the fact that outside UW, like DMV area has like a large Sudanese population.
That's true.
So you'd actually find your people around and hang around with them.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Also, I want to kind of touch on, because you say you've been here for 3 years, right?
Yeah.
So was the 3 years, were you coming from your country to come attend college here? Was it straight or was it?
So I was in Qatar before that for like 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
My parents moved there, and so I went and did my last 2 years of high school there.
Gotcha. What made you want to come to, I guess, America to try to finish your studies?
So first of all, I'm technically an American citizen.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
So that's a benefit. In addition to the fact that like the U.S. has like the leading academy in the world.
Right.
And you probably want to learn the best you could out of here in order to like be able to like benefit people back home and stuff.
Right.
Gotcha.
So being here, have you found it difficult more so to stay in touch with your Sudanese culture, etc., whilst you've been here? Or do you find that it's been easier, or what are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, I haven't noticed that it was difficult at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like with all technology and like social media and stuff, you're always in touch with people.
Right.
To the fact that like you're still on daily contact with many of your friends.
Right.
That's true.
And like I think it's a deliberate choice you make. Like if you want to stay in touch with people, you could. If you want to forget about everyone and like blend in here, you could do that.
That's true.
Depends on your personality.
That's true. I mean, knowing myself, my family, WhatsApp is the biggest thing in the world.
Exactly.
Everybody's going back and forth.
That's true.
Once my mom knew I used WhatsApp, it's been over. She even uses emojis now, man. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh. Do you guys get the whole, like, do your parents send you all the random videos as well? No? Okay, never mind. Like the random, like, oh, be careful if you put your phone beside your bed, it'll blow up and you'll die. No, okay.
Grandparents.
Okay.
Nah, I feel that.
Okay.
All right, so I guess thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
No, you're welcome. One of the biggest things that we're really trying to touch on, like I said, the African us, we're really trying to bridge the gap in regards to some of the issues that are happening and also just being African, also American. And what I really want to talk about today is the Sudan Revolution and how some of the art has impacted some of the things happening in the Sudan Revolution.
Right.
So first and foremost, I want you to tell the audience, basically, what is the Sudan Revolution? Point blank.
In what terms?
In terms of a Sudanese citizen.
So I'm pretty sure people have heard about our previous regime and how they stayed in power for such a long period and weren't able to provide anything for the Sudanese citizens. And so the protests started in December.
Right.
And it like lots of events took place prior to that, and then eventually the protest took place. It was basically a revolution against like the injustice that was taking place, corruption, the lack of like a decent living people were facing, and it was a revolution against the whole system, I could say, the whole regime. It wasn't against Omar Bashir per se, because unlike other rulers, he like usually citizens or they hate the head of the state, but here people actually acknowledge that it was like a whole gang, you could say, which was like leading the country to ruins.
And that was with the military as well, being that. Well, when they talked about the military being the ones that are being the head of.
So I honestly, I think that's misleading because the masterminds behind all of the disastrous things that happened in Sudan weren't the military. Like if you look at Sudan's history since 1956, it was always the civilians who led the country into like coups, or they were the ones who supported the coups, like starting off with the first coup in 58. Like the head of the government told the head of the armed forces, come and take over. So and even in like the last regime, you'd notice that most of the wicked and evil people were civilians. So I don't think it's the military versus. You could find a good military man, but you could also find a very terrible civilian. So I think that's like one of my issues with the current discourse is that it's military versus civilians, which I think is unjust to both sides.
That's interesting because most of the things that I read painted that picture of
Yeah,
like
they
the
painted
military versus like civilians. The civilians want what's good, and the military is like quote unquote the bad guys.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you brought up that point, and it's good you did. So what was it like when hearing about the recent protests, everything that was going on in Sudan, and being here? What was it like hearing about everything and kind of being here, hearing all the news? What were your initial reactions? How did you feel?
So when it first started off in December, I was here, and then after like a week or so, I was in Sudan. So I was able to notice that like the first few protests and stuff, the country was a bit, the city, I could say.
Right.
Were you going purposely for?
No, I was going for my aunt's wedding.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
okay.
Yeah.
Was that all good?
It was good. Yeah, we were wearing that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
The wedding's
cool.
so happy.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And then I was there, and then things I think cooled down for a bit, and then I left.
Gotcha.
But it got intense, so it was like April,
Yeah.
and that's when like there was you would like be on Facebook for like 2 or 3 hours a day. Plus, I don't know if this is just a thing that's happening in Sudan or like other countries, but for some reason, there are lots of live videos where like activists, like not even activists, normal people would start a live video on Facebook and start like addressing everyone. And I don't know if it's for the sake of popularity or for the sake of.
I mean, that does pose a good question, you know, because I mean, a lot of times, you know, when you see things happening on social media and you're just kind of getting the reactions from different people, you start to question some of the genuinity of just how everything is going. I'm not sure. I really couldn't point out. I mean, I know in America there are things that people do, quote unquote, call it clout.
Right.
And there's things that people genuinely are trying to make sure people are known for.
Yeah.
And I think with the Sudan Revolution, I hope, I really do hope that people were trying to really inform everybody. I know a lot of my friends and some of the individuals in this room definitely did our work and did our part in trying to make sure everybody was aware, updated, and stuff like that. So hopefully what was trying to be said, but that also points out to the point where she was trying to make about just the people being painted as the military and the people being against each other, you know, and that was really the big picture, you know. A lot of us was just thinking like, wow, the military is really coming to just come and corrupt everything even more, even though al-Bashir is already gone out of office. But we was really trying to kind of get an idea of just how that was happening and then how the military is ruining people's lives and stuff like that. So it was really like a hard time for everybody where Sudani people will come up to me and just let me know like, hey, this is what's going on. These are some of the things that you need to be aware of. And then, you know, how Instagram, everybody made the blue profile pictures.
We'll talk more about that as the conversation flows.
But it's really interesting how you just pointed that out because we're living in the 21st century, man. Everybody wants to have some sort of fame nowadays.
Right. I kind of agree going off of him as well. Like I would hope as well to think that a lot of those live videos are more so in the place to educate people. This is what's going on. This is real life, what I'm seeing. So so that the audience can see, okay, wow, this is really what's going on there. So I think I would hope that was what the goal of those live videos, etc. was. So now that we've kind of covered the base of, you know, what the protests, how you felt, etc., being here and there, we'd like to kind of pivot towards the main topic of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about art and the role that it's had in Sudan's history, but more so in protests, revolutions, and what it's represented for the people. So just to start, what do you think art has represented for Sudan in times of conflict? What kind of medium do you think it has represented for you guys?
So I think the most influential part of the art was in the recent protests, because usually when like there's lots of oppression and stuff, people usually can't express themselves. And so if you guys remember the sitting in front of the military headquarters, so people are like drawing graffiti and like all sorts of things I've never seen in Sudan. And I think art in general is very helpful, and it's not only in that we get to express ourselves, but in order for us to understand what others are actually thinking inside. So that's why when you notice in every time period in human history, art has changed. It might change in a positive manner or a negative manner. And so analyzing the art will help you to understand how the community is actually perceiving certain aspects in their day-to-day lives.
Do you think the art itself, do you think it added, because you know Instagram is a big thing, it's a big forum where people can display their art and all that stuff. Do you think it was able to add a bridge in regards to Sudan and America?
The diaspora, like the Sudanese diaspora?
I would say so, but you still have to put in mind that this is a very small minority of the city's population, and they usually have the same ideals and and to a certain extent values of like those living abroad. But if you take a look at general statistics, it's a very small minority that's actually accessing Instagram and Twitter. Maybe a greater extent of those who on Facebook, but when you like in general, like there's a limited amount of people who have access to internet in general. So I think when we're discussing countries such as Sudan, we should be a bit more careful,
Right.
Because Sudan is a very big country,
Right.
and like we can't make generalizations about the population.
Right.
That's very
We as Sudanese fall in that trap, but in order for us to go forward, we should be much more specific of what's actually happening, where and when, and who's actually advocating for it.
I mean, but you think, do you think that gets lost in translation throughout all the people putting so many different videos here and there, and then
No, I think there's a general trend.
The general trend.
There's a general trend.
Gotcha. Okay.
So still talking more so about art. So there's specific ideas. There are thoughts out there that maybe art can be something that can provoke change. Art is something that can, I don't know per se if it can change a whole regime, but it can inspire change. What, in your words, do you think that unarmed protesters can actually use like methods of nonviolence, like let's say like art or slogans, etc., to incite change? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying. I think in general, art has always been a very useful tool for
Right.
humans in general.
Right.
So like even if you go back to when we were like cavemen,
Right.
you would find that people like would draw and stuff in order to find a meaning, for example.
Right.
You find that in other civilizations. Poetry, for example, is used in times both in war and at peace in order to like persuade fighters, or in sometimes just for the sake of pleasure. But I think in general, art has always had a purpose. Entertainment always had a purpose. It's nowadays it's for the sake of entertainment itself. It had no other higher objective.
Right.
So I think art did play a good role, especially with like all the chants. You'd find like nowadays like 4 or 5 year olds
Right.
singing all the chants in Sudan
Wow.
and stuff. So there's like a revolutionary spirit, I could say. And usually art, both visual and non-visual, it helps in like spreading the message itself.
It's true.
'Cause, like you'd notice that great way of unite, even like playing around with people's emotions. Like a good poem would have a great effect on people better than, for example, giving them a speech.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
That's very true. So in that, we also have the role of social media, and social media helps to kind of spread a lot of this artwork and initiate conversation about what's going on. And one of the main photographs that comes to mind when I think of everything that happened is the lady. We're going to talk about that. So the image of, I think her name's Allah Salah.
Yeah, Allah Salah.
Standing on top of the car, with her hand out, kind of leading everyone. So what do you think this image represented and represents for the revolution, the role of women, and what they've done and continue to do?
I think historically speaking, women in Sudan have always played a great role.
Right.
Varies from place to place. And I think the great aspect of Allah Salah is that since colonization onward, we've been losing our identities. And so you could notice many communities in Africa, they've lost their dress already. Some have lost their languages.
Right.
Some have lost many things. Probably one of the few things that actually, the positive few things that happened in Sudan lately, like even prior, like for the revolution, is that young girls have, Khartoum specifically, many universities, they're having like national days where they come wearing the traditional dress.
Okay.
And it's a good thing, because the traditional dress in the past few years, or not few years, like 20, 30, 40 years, it's worn by women who are married. So if you're wearing the tobe and stuff,
Right.
it's a sign that you're married. But prior to like in the 60s and 50s and so on, like it was like part of school uniform to like women to go wearing, or like university and stuff, they'd wear the toga and stuff. And so, and all the white color always like signified working woman.
Right.
And so I think like first of all they're reviving a tradition, which I think is very important if you want to build a state.
Right.
Is that you want to have allow the cultural elements to flourish. You don't want to impose foreign ideas and foreign tradition to back home. And so she what's it called? She was wearing the white toga and stuff, and but there were other women involved in the revolution and stuff. Women in general, even if their involvement isn't directly in part of the protests and stuff, they have other like motivational aspects, and everyone plays a different role. And so I think her icon, that went viral and stuff, even like it kind of helped people to visualize like the role of women in Sudan and stuff like.
Right.
But on the flip side, people or like Western media wants to highlight certain aspects of the culture.
Yeah. So another point, kind of talking about that. So I feel like throughout African history in various countries, when we hear of like independent stories, we never really hear about the role of like women, right? So we always hear about the men who led. For example, Kwame Nkrumah, he led, Ghana to independence. We don't hear about the women behind that. So with the artwork and imagery that's been produced, that continues to be produced with everything that's going on in Sudan, do we think that recognition is finally starting to be given to women with a lot of this imagery that we're seeing? Do you think that we're now starting to recognize the important role that women have and continue to have in our countries and our societies?
I think women have and will always play a great role.
Right.
It's how we define that role.
Right.
What measures do we want to I think nowadays the problem is that there's a certain focus of where the role of women should be directed,
right,
and neglecting other roles. So, like for example, today, Bill Gates, remarkable man, helped out with he made a technological revolution. But there are lots of people behind him, both men and women,
right,
which we don't know about.
It's true.
And I think if we were to always compare our achievements as humans and then divide it up between sexes, I think we would always be in a constant struggle. But the fact that as soon as we acknowledge that our roles are complementary to each other, then we'd understand who plays which role and when and how. So I think women in general have been, as men, I don't like comparing between them.
Right, of course.
But I think we should allow them to flourish in what they would want to do. And the fact that, if, for example, you find a ministry or a cabinet full of men, it doesn't mean that women are being oppressed, or it doesn't mean that their role is insignificant.
Do you think that's emphasized through Sharia law?
Okay, so Sharia has, so if we were to look at it in different components, it has the metaphysical aspect, right? And it acknowledges different human sexes. And I think it was always in the favor of women, because a main tenet of our faith is that men are responsible for protecting and guarding women. And so if nowadays the problem is men are not doing their responsibility.
That's very true. There's a constant saying, we're not going to say it, but everybody knows what we're talking about. So basically there's a thing of, so everybody basically says men are not, so they always try to put the notion that us men, we're doing the bare minimum when it comes down to it.
I think, I'm not going to make generalizations, but when men lack what traditionally they're supposed to do, it ends up hurting women more.
That's very true. That's very true. Very true. So I mean, with that being said, as men, what are some of the things that you can see us do better in regard to enabling women to be their best selves as well?
I think it's for us, it's theoretically we could say whatever because we don't have families, because like the main issues that face women on day-to-day basis are usually family problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's not women don't complain that they don't have many in power and stuff, but they usually it's still even like the most egalitarian societies. The main constant problems that they do face are within households. And so as long as the male component is providing and doing his main responsibilities of like protecting the woman, I think then women would face less hardships in their day-to-day activities.
You're talking specifically in the Sudanese context.
Context, yeah, because like you hear lots of problems of like men prohibiting women from traveling. Even I read a tweet yesterday where they were divorced, and he didn't want to allow her daughter to travel. So like small, and he doesn't want to, and he's not providing for his daughter. So those are like injustices facing the mother and her daughter. Also, like getting out of the household, there are problems about ownership of land and stuff. It's all about like carrying out like deep analysis and research to acknowledge what's actually happening on facing women. Because like what a problem facing a lady in Khartoum would probably differ 180 degrees if you just go to the outskirts of Khartoum.
Right.
So I guess, if in any context, I guess we really should emphasize on some of the art that we have behind us, really. So as we have here, we have different displays of art from different characters of people who were imagining the Sudan Revolution.
So the first one is of Allah Salah. Yeah, you pronounce that. And we have this one, I don't remember the name, but it's by, his name is, I think it's Gala? Okay, never mind. Anyways, we have this image here of, I guess, a woman yelling.
Oh, Sama, that's Sama.
Oh.
Because of the turban.
Okay, maybe you should explain. You should maybe give your interpretation of these images, because this is obviously not my expertise.
And I think I haven't seen this one, but I've seen this one. I think that was next to the military sit-in.
Okay.
And remarkable painting, because like, see lots. I can't notice what's exactly happening inside, but and you see the young guy standing up with the flag. Yeah. You could also notice here that there's like a nostalgic element to old Sudan.
Right.
And so she has the old Sudanese flag on her cheeks. Yeah. I think the DRC or like another African country took the old flag. The new one's Arab flag.
And what do you? I mean,
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Ladies first, right? Here we go.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll go. Okay, so actually touching off of that, you were talking about the new flag that's inspired by Arab. So I have a question for that. So what are your thoughts on what is Africanism versus like Arabism?
I think that's a question that people should avoid. You know what? Also, because the idea of nationalism and stuff wasn't a local thing, and it's still causing problems even in Europe. And so, if you want to mold the country, especially a country so diverse as Sudan, into like a single national identity, others are going to be left out. So you have people who are like Sudan differs greatly: north, south, the east, the west. Even within Darfur, people have different culture.
That's very true. That's very true.
And so, and the idea of Arab versus African, I think it's not a equal comparison, because Africa is a continent, and you find Africans. You have Arab Africans, the Egyptians, the Sudanese to a greater extent, the Moroccans, and so it's just like saying Asians versus Arabs.
Right.
That is very true. I think that's one of the main things that we as a group are really trying to encompass, which is basically bridging all those gaps, trying not to single anybody out. You know what I'm saying? We're really making sure that we emphasize on everybody and giving everybody the expression to be able to say, we are here, we are this,
Like, for example, like it's Western Sudan. We're bordering Chad, right? There are lots of tribes who are in both countries.
Right.
I'm pretty sure if you ask those people, they'd identify as part of the tribe they're in, and might have a stronger relation with their tribal counterparts more than they'd have, like, just for the fact that they're Sudanese or they're Chadian, because they're the same tribe. They probably get along across the border better than they do in relation to people in the capital. So as soon as you kind of diffuse the national identity problem, I think the US is a great example, because it's a very fluid identity. You just have to be born here, like you're American, and so that's why I think it's succeeded, because it's been able to attract people all over the world.
Have we really succeeded though?
Well, it's like the leading nation.
I mean,
I think you should you redirect that. Redirect that one.
No, for example, the US versus Japan.
That's true.
The reason, like, Japanese haven't been able to come up with any major new products or companies for the past 20 years. But the reason that the US is still being able to develop is that 40% of like all the innovation, technology, and stuff businesses are set up by immigrants.
Yeah, it's true.
So great countries always accept people from all different backgrounds. Yeah.
So as a continent of Africa, being that we do have so many different backgrounds, so many different cultures, do you ever think we will be able to encompass that same kind of identity in regards to how the U.S. functions, or
the whole of Africa?
Yeah.
No.
As in, like, you talking about like
one Africa?
No, I think unless someone like conquers the whole country.
So basically, you're going to a dictatorship.
We can't even get along like within like a city.
That's true. Because a lot of people.
But what we could do is like aim for like economic unity or something. Like start out
we
small.
do have stuff like that. Like we have like in the West, ECOWAS, and things like that. So I mean, those are, I guess, small steps to kind of unify. But yeah, in terms of one Africa, it's going to be very difficult.
One day. But I want to say thank you, man. Thank you for coming. Everything has been great.
Thank you. We learned a lot from you.
You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things that I feel like our viewers and us have definitely been able to experience, and this has been one of the greatest conversations I've ever had about this.
Thanks for the Pringles.
All right, guys. So thank you again. My name is Ibrahim, aka Salon Boy. This is
Nana. Nana from Ghana.
Thank you for watching, guys, and we shall see you next time.
Just one note, just before we end, just wanted to emphasize that. I just want to emphasize that this is a learning experience for both of us. So if there's anything that either one of us said that did not, was not politically correct or anything, we apologize in advance because we're learning as we go. But yeah. Thank you.
What she said.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
It's a wrap.